Hey guys, welcome back to the Pulling Curls podcast. Today on episode 192, we are talking about recession-proofing our budget. Let's untangle it. Hi, I'm Hillary Erickson, the curly head behind the Pulling Curls podcast, Pregnancy and Parenting Untangled. There's no right answer for every family, but on this show, we hope to give you some ideas to make life simpler at your house. Life's tangled, just like my hair. Okay, I'm excited for today's guest. She is a certified financial planner. She runs a full-service financial firm called HighTower Somerset Advisory, but I found her on the Tickety Talk under the Wealth Edit, where she was just talking about recession-proofing your budget, and I thought what she had to say was so simple and easy to understand. I invited her onto the podcast. I want to introduce today's guest, Lauren Pearson. Do you ever just feel like it's unfair that some people can have company over at a moment's notice? Their house is just super easy to clean up and they can relax on the couch with Netflix while you feel like you always have things to do around your house. That can totally be you. The Organized Home is here to help you simplify organizing. We're talking about decluttering, zones, organization systems that actually work. We've got assignments and challenges. I hope you'll join us. You can use coupon code UNTANGLED. Look for the Organized Home link in the show notes. Hey, Lauren, welcome to the Pulling Curls podcast.
Hi, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I am so excited. I love to talk about money, even though a
Me
lot of
too.
people don't. My dad was an economist, so, money was always a talk at our house growing up. And I think it needs to be more open and out there because I think everybody sees on Instagram that I'm on a cruise 24 hours a day because that's the only time I post.
Sure. Yes. Online images can be deceiving sometimes.
Yes, you are seeing when I am spending the largest quantities of money. I did not Instagram last night when I was pawing through my dried bean collection to decide what to make for dinner. Okay, so I loved your video, Lauren, about just shifting your budget, kind of like you would shift your diet or you would shift other things. When you're in a recession, you just might change the way that you look at budgeting.
Sure. Yeah, it's hard because for a really, really long time, the government has been kind of signaling to us to spend, to invest, to grow. Interest rates have been low. So we've been taking the cues and living in a low interest rate environment for a very long time. It kind of starts to skew your thinking of reality. Like you could afford more if you were looking to buy a home. There's all of these things that we just got. You could grow a business. Everyone's feeling very sentiment was really good around growth of the US and what we're supposed to do. But there was also a good bit of stimulus happening again from the government saying grow, grow, grow. And when all of that stops, which it has, starting at the beginning of last year, we got a very clear signal from Fed Chairman Powell that we are going to raise rates until inflation is under control. I am one of those people that always believes the Fed. There's a saying that says, don't fight the Fed, and that's real. And so the signals changed. But if you spent 13 years in a low interest rate, sort of let's grow environment post financial crisis, or more, really closer to 15, that's when it gets a little confusing because things have to change beyond what you could potentially afford in a house. It's everything. Eggs are, ridiculous. Everyone's talking about how much eggs cost right now, but that's just an easy thing to point to the larger issue where it's like you just have to cut to make sure your family or you as an individual can adapt to different market conditions.
Yeah. And I think that's so important because my son I was explaining to him about interest rates when I was little, because I was born in 76. So when I was little, 80s interest rates, and he was like, what? Like he just had no idea. And I think really I probably only know about this because my dad's an economist, for the vast majority of people 50 and below just literally have no idea that anyone was ever paying more than 5% for their mortgage rate on their home.
Truly, nobody saw that. I mean, I remember my mom and dad talking about it, 18, 19%. That seems unfathomable to us, but they really do have to use the arrows that they have in their quiver, and interest rates going up is one of them, and it's an important one. So Fair point.
Yeah. What do you do? Because there are still things you still have to, we're all still buying eggs. We're probably buying less eggs because I'm
Yes.
like, breakfast for dinner, we'll have dried beans instead. But we all still need to make eggs for our family. So what do you do? What tips do you have for us?
Sure. So the first thing I do, and I'm not sponsored, so you can just kind of take this for what it is. But the first thing that I did, because I'm not, admittedly, even being in wealth management and doing this all day and helping other clients with cash flow, your own cash flow is different. I think that the reason people hire advisors is because it's very difficult for you to have realistic perspective on your money. And so you have to sort of condition yourself to do that. So the first thing that I did was use what's called Rocket Money. It's a new name. I can't remember I think it used to be called Truebill, but I use it and I give them access. They have a back end system called Plaid that basically can like link all of your credit cards, checking accounts. So it's basically, studying what you do as a monthly household as far as spending, income, all of the things that would make up who you are financially. So I started doing that, and I found that that was an extremely helpful, efficient system for our family because we have 5 people in our family. Everyone to some degree is spending money. My kids have what's called a green light card, so I can kind of control what they spend, but they're still learning good money habits. But Rocket Money has really taught me, okay, this is how much you spend on a monthly basis, and this is how it's different from last month. The longer you use it, the more in tune it gets with your spending, which I think just the idea of really truly the idea of just watching your money, becoming a student of your money, I think is number one. So whether you have a little tool like Rocket Money that helps you, whether Excel is your best friend, whether some people use you need a budget, like there's all these different things that you can use that can be helpful and powerful to kind of help you become a student of your money. But you really need to know what you spend. That goes for anyone. It doesn't matter how much you spend. A lot of times people, I think also getting into and this is going to be my second point, but the behavioral aspect of money, there's a lot of guilt around money, whether you have it or you don't, or you were taught good money habits or you weren't. You just get a lot of people that I know when they come in to see us for the first time as advisors, they say, oh my gosh, I just spend so much money. Like I started looking at it since you asked me that question and I feel so embarrassed. Like it doesn't matter if they're spending 50,000 or 450,000 or $1 million. Like it doesn't, they all feel something about what they spend, whether that's valid or not. So I guess my second thing is once you become a student of your spending, really get in tune with like what you're feeling around that. I think that's where people sort of ostrich if they're going to, that's what I call it, like stick their head in the sand at that point. There's a wonderful woman who is a friend of the Wealth Edit called Helen Owen, and she calls this facing the tiger. So like really saying, okay, this is where I am financially. And the good news about being an American, about you can be a different person today than you were yesterday. You can make different choices today about your health, about your resources, and there's no judgment there. So, I think it's just kind of acknowledging you don't have to be the person today that you were yesterday financially and really living into all of that. So, I guess those are two main points. And I have some other ones too. I mean, I think the next thing to kind of focus in on is separating out your need to have expenses versus like to have expenses, and people kind of approach this differently too. So in our family we're doing what's called a no spend year. Now this is very difficult because we're going through renovations. You have to decide what that looks like for you. For my family, because we're going through renovation, house expenses are still allowed because we just have to. That's just where we are in life. And we allow ourselves to replace. So I had a pair of tennis shoes go out. And so I'm able to buy something to replace something old. But even that act has really, really given us so much power in that, like, we spend a lot on conveniences, at least my family did, on things that we don't actually need that have become habits but aren't necessities. And I think separating out habits and necessities, when you get to that point, again, it's going to take you a few months. Rome wasn't built in a day. So it's going to take a few months for all of these things to kind of become something that you really enjoy doing or really want to pursue. And I always say it's like landing a plane. So it's not an overnight process. And that's how I really would hope people would frame these kind of discussions in their head, realizing that for most of us, a situation like what's happening nationally is going to cause us to have to pull back in some way, shape, or form. So, kind of going with that versus getting paralyzed or, feeling like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. That's all going to be very important. The fourth thing I would say, and this is an important one too, sometimes when things are contracting, it's very important to think about kind of worst case scenario. What if I lose my job? Like kind of recession proof yourself, your personal finances. How long could we go if that was a reality? How long, if you're married, could you go if that was a reality for one of you to be out? And then you need to have an emergency fund if you can to sort of figure out that math backwards. Like, okay, I would more than likely be out of work for 3 months, or I would more than likely be out of work for 6 months. Typically, the more money you make, so over 100,000, those jobs typically take longer to replace if you're truly out of work. So, really estimating that. So maybe if you're a dual income family, both people are making over 100,000. A typical CFP would say 3 months net savings would be enough. I would propose maybe it's more like six. So take that for what it's worth. But really recession proofing. And we have that. We have a wealth edit guidebook. We actually do a recession proofing of both your personal and business finances in the book. It's very, very important to know that. Yeah. So that's four. What questions do you have from there? And I can keep going if I need to.
So I love the idea of a no spend. Now you're going a whole year, but people could start with just even a no spend week, right? Like this week, we're
Totally.
just not gonna spend. And maybe, like, what do you think you could? Because obviously you're still buying groceries because everyone's gonna eat, right?
Correct.
So, what are like some basic rules that people make sort of in that no spend week?
Sure. So maybe they say like it's a cutting back. So, for example, my daughters dance. And so, because of that, there's one night a week where it's like we actually have to eat out. There's just not another, unless we packed a snack and then it's going to sit in the car for a little while. It just doesn't make any sense. So, maybe saying instead of getting takeout 3 nights a week, you really look at like where you might need to eat out, or maybe as a special treat for your family. If you've had a great week, you get pizza on Friday nights, like whatever the ritual is. Maybe we say rituals are in, but ancillary, just kind of lazy spending around meals is out. One thing that we really took, we are big Costco people. So, we kind of build on our Costco. I've almost figured out like a map of what I need to replace every 2 weeks at Costco versus every week at Costco because you're buying more bulk. And so maybe we're getting yogurts for lunches every 2 weeks versus just not thinking about it and having the habit of putting it in your cart. So, yes, groceries are still a must. We cook in more. And it was amazing how quickly you could get down that miscellaneous category of just Target runs. We just don't do Target runs anymore. I always say Target has like a $200 cover charge. I love you, Target, but like I just don't need that right now. I think if people were to start with the week, then what would be good is to sort of say, okay, we're not going to eat out. That's a big one. No, just sort of ancillary spending on cute shirts, things I might see on Amazon, or an influencer that has this great thing that's 47% off this week. Anything like that, I think you can just kind of cut it out. The other thing that's incredibly helpful as you're beginning this is what we say in our financial minimalism course, is to write down what you're spending twice. So, like, have a little notebook. If you do this for a week, it's much easier than a year because it'll be like a novel. But have a tiny little notebook where it's like, okay, 57 bucks on gas, 25 bucks at the grocery store if you're just picking up stuff. So write it down while you're spending real time or in your phone or something, and then write it down again at night so that you can kind of log everything that you've spent. That exercise of writing it down twice is so powerful because you're actually giving yourself the mental margin to say, this is a commitment I'm making to myself and I'm going to get better at this. So that's a little kind of fun trick that we found that works really well for people. It's pretty powerful.
Yeah, just like what you're eating, right? Even if you just write down, I had 3 Snickers bars, it just makes you rethink, was that my best choice? Could I have just had one?
Yes. I mean, it's like for me, the funny thing for me just habitually is like I'm kind of a snacker and like just cutting out a lot of the snacks where I just like pick up something at the gas station or whatever, just because I'm a busy person. Just being slightly more thoughtful can actually have pretty powerful ramifications on your spending.
Yeah. All right. I think this was great. And I think people immediately like pull back. They're like, oh, I don't want to spend less. But I have to remind myself that a lot of times I'm not even noticing that I'm not spending these things, especially in my happiness level. Like if you think of your happiness level is on a graph, right? My dad was always like, are you getting the same benefit of the 10th month of Netflix as you got in the first month of Netflix, right? That first month, you're overjoyed.
Yes.
The world is your oyster. You have
So true.
everything. And on the 10th, you're like, is there really anything to watch? And he's always like, just cancel it for a few months. Save yourself the $45 or whatever. And then when you're missing it, then that joy comes back and you get a happiness boost again from that back to the first month, right?
I love that. And one thing that I've done with my girls, which has been fun, is I'm doing a lot of free advertising on your podcast today. Cause again, I'm not sponsored by anybody, but you can also play little games with yourself if you're going to do an extended no spend year. So like we've been giving out of our closets to this service called Thread Up, and then we get a little credit. And so we've allowed ourselves to use that credit. We're like, okay, it's more sustainable just for the earth and the environment. But it also gives us a little incentive to clean out our clothes that we don't want anymore, get paid for it, which is incentive to do that. And then you can shop a little because we've got a little bit of cash, or if you sell things in your home, there's all sorts of kind of ways that you can learn to be resourceful and just do some fun things that actually are so much more rewarding, to your point, than just the blind spending that we get in the habit of doing on certain things.
Yeah. You know what is most disappointing to me is to get home from a Target trip and be like, oh, I have to find places to put all these things. And then I'm like, why did I buy this? If it wasn't directly like, I know exactly where I'm going to use this, I know exactly where I'm going to put this, why did I purchase it?
Yes.
Because now I'm like decreasing my happiness. Like, where am I going to put this? Where am I going to store this until I might need it? Right.
Right. Exactly. And really, we don't realize how much mental margin, all this stuff that surrounds us. I have a friend who's a minimalist just by nature. It's the way that she is. I'll tell you, it is amazing how I just feel like her life has a greater sense of calm than mine, And I think, especially if you have children often are little hoarders, like to help them create these habits where they're able to be in a wonderful space. And I don't do this well. So, do as I say, not as I do. But really, we've worked on, for one of my daughters, she's not naturally very tidy. She just doesn't have a lot of stuff. It's easy to tidy her room because she doesn't have a lot of stuff. Contrast that to my third child, my little creative bug who has all the things, saves all of the beautiful artwork, all the pictures. And, it's really difficult and demotivating to clean her room because she has too many things in there and they don't fit, to your point. So really being mindful of like, where is this thing going to go and where am I going to enjoy it for life?
Yeah. Is this purchase actually going to make me happy? Because we all like think back about the week, like what did you buy that made you happy? And then all the other things you bought. I know there's always going to be the can of beans, whatever that's not going to make you happy.
Yes.
Like paying my mortgage probably didn't make me that happy, but living in a house when it's raining is amazing.
It's pretty great. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, I just think we need to be more open on the things that we're spending, how we cut back, which is why I love people should follow your channel to just show that families can still have splurges, like remodeling their home.
Yes.
But can still cut back on other things to make that life possible, right?
Yeah. And that's another thing. I think most people that come into our private practice really have a deep desire for their children to be good with money, especially if they're people who are overfunded for their lifetime. It's like they feel the burden that their children are going to grow up and have a lot of privileges and things that I don't know the right word to say, but they're going to be, just inherit a bunch of things. So like, how do you make sure that these people are still great contributors? How do you make sure that these people, and you really don't want your children to be rotten tomatoes. Like that's how I think of my kids in my head. If I'm giving them too many things, they're like a tomato that's rotting on my counter. Like that's not what you want. Like you want your kids to be healthy and good with money and to feel a great deep confidence that things aren't going to fulfill them. Really, there's so much more than what we can spend our money on out there to invest our time and our talent and, yes, our treasures. But, I don't know. I just think that when you start to get kids involved, that's when things get real because you want them to be good with money too. and you want to teach them great habits. And I think just the open dialogue around, yeah, we're not spending as much this year because we're doing this kitchen renovation or whatever it is. I mean, there's just, they need to know that like money does not grow on trees, as our parents and grandparents and great grandparents said.
Yeah. And I will say, so we're pretty churchy at our house. And I don't know that my oldest has taken a lot of my churchy thoughts, but that kid has taken every single financial lesson I have taught him. And it is deep in his heart. Like he is very much like,
Yes.
this is my time to put money into retirement. Like he talks to me about that all the time. And nothing has been more fulfilling to me as a parent as me talking to him, as I was like filling out my retirement sheet at a new job or whatever, and just saying how important retirement
Yes.
is. Like it's stuck. Like, yay.
It
I did one
sticks.
thing right.
Yes. Well, good job, mama. And you really do with anything in parenting. You want to be that first plow. You want to be that first concept that a child is introduced to and some of these great habits. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah. So great. Just think about it more. Think about your happiness. Follow the wealth edit, because a lot of times when she comes up, it just reminds me to be, is this money making me as happy as I could? Are there places we could cut back without impinging on the happiness? And the answer is yes.
Mm-hmm.
So stop being so lazy in my purchases, Hillary, is mostly what it reminds me. So thanks for coming on. I hope this gave some ideas to you guys. If you guys have ever done a no spend day, week, month, year, tell us in the comments on Instagram. We would love to chitty chat about it. Thanks for coming on, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. This has been fun.
Okay, we didn't talk about it in the show, which is just how unsalesy Lauren is, but she actually has an online membership-based community that educates women on how to develop a modern skill set for their personal finances. And I think that a lot of people just really are not good at finances. And so if that's something that you're lacking, I would encourage you to check that out under the Wealth Edit. I think she's very realistic and very helpful. She also has a co-founder who is a young widow. So you get like a lot of advice from different sides of things. And I think that's really important and exciting. So if you're looking for more financial information, be sure and check that out. Thanks so much for coming on, Lauren. Be sure and stay tuned. Next week, we have a Deja Vu episode on splitting up chores. And then the week after that, we are talking about pregnancy nutrition. So we have some great episodes coming up. Thanks so much for joining us on today's episode. The Pulling Curls podcast grows when you share us on social media or leave a review. If you do, please tag us so that we can share and send you a virtual hug, which frankly is my favorite kind of hugging. Until next time, we hope you have a tangle-free day.